All right, let's jump right into a skill that is absolutely essential for your maths literacy exams, figuring out how to ask the right questions to get the right data. If you can get this down, you're going to be in great shape. You know, everything in data handling, whether it's a small class project or some massive national survey, it all boils down to this one simple question. How do we stop guessing and actually figure out what's really going on? And here it is, the secret sauce. The quality of the answers you get depends completely on the quality of the questions you ask. It's that simple. If you ask a bad question, you're going to get bad data, and that just leads to the wrong conclusions. Every time. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to walk through the exact steps any researcher would take. Let's pretend our mission is to figure out if our school's tuck shop could be better. We'll use that as our example as we go from just an idea to getting results we can actually trust. Before you can count or measure anything at all, you have to know exactly what you're looking for. Seriously, think of it like putting a destination into your GPS. Your question is that destination, and it's going to guide every single turn you make from here on out. So what even is data? Well, don't overthink it. It's just raw information. Think of data as all the little puzzle pieces you collect. Once you put them all together, they should, hopefully, give you the answer to the big question you started with. The very first thing you need to do is sort your data into two big buckets. Just ask yourself, is this info described with words, like someone's favorite snack from the tuck shop? If it is, that's qualitative or categorical data. Or is it described with numbers, like the actual price of a pie? Well, that's quantitative or numerical data. Now, let's zoom in on that quantitative data, because this is a big deal in exams. It splits into two types. If you can count it using whole numbers, like the tuck shop can't sell you half a chocolate bar, right? It's 1 or 2. That's discrete data. But if you can measure it and it could have decimals or fractions, like the weight of a packet of chips in grams, that's continuous data. All right, so now we know what our data might look like, but let's talk about the questions themselves. Because asking a bad question, that's like putting the wrong address into your GPS. All the hard work that comes next is just going to lead you further and further away from the truth. So what makes a question good? It's a pretty simple checklist, actually. First, it has to be super clear and easy to understand. Second, it's got to be relevant to what you're investigating. And third, and this is the most important one, it has to be totally neutral, so it doesn't try to push someone towards a certain answer. Okay, look closely at this one. In an exam, they might ask you to explain why this question is so bad. See that phrase, "Don't you agree?" That's not a real question. It's a loaded phrase that's basically pressuring you to say yes. It's not looking for your honest opinion, it's looking for you to confirm what the researcher already thinks. It's a classic leading question. And putting them side by side like this makes it so obvious. The questions on the left are totally judgmental. Phrases like, "destroy your lungs," or "why do you agree?" are designed to get an emotional reaction. But the questions on the right, they're neutral. They just ask for a fact or an honest opinion, which lets people give a real answer. You also have to choose a question's style. Open-ended questions are amazing for getting deep opinions, like asking, "what could the tuck shop do better?" But wow, trying to organize all those different answers can be a real headache. On the other hand, closed-ended questions, with simple yes, no, or multiple choice options, are super quick to answer and incredibly easy to tally up and analyze. So here is the absolute bottom line, the thing you have to remember for your exams. Biased questions give you bad, unreliable data. And if your data is garbage from the start, then any conclusion you make from it is totally, completely worthless. Okay, so we've crafted a perfect, unbiased question. Now, how do we actually get the answers? Let's open up our data collection toolkit and look at the main options: questionnaires, interviews, and observation. First up, questionnaires. These are your go-to when you need to get info from a lot of people, and you need it fast and cheap. Think about a Google form about the tuck shop you could email to every learner. The big downside, though? If someone finds a question confusing, there's nobody there to explain it, and you might get a bunch of answers that don't make sense. But what if you want the real juicy details? Well, that's where interviews shine. You can ask follow-up questions like, "that's interesting, why do you feel the tuck shop prices are too high?" and get some really rich answers. The trade-off is that they take a ton of time and effort. Plus, you have to be super careful that the person asking the questions doesn't accidentally influence the answers. And then there's a totally different method. Just watch. Seriously. You could stand near the tuck shop and simply count how many learners buy lunch versus how many bring their own. You're not asking what people say they do. You're recording what they actually do. So we have our perfect question and our chosen tool. But wait a minute, we probably can't survey or interview every single learner in the school. That would take forever. So we need a smart way to choose who we're going to ask. First, we need to know our population. Now, that's a fancy word for a simple idea. It's the entire group of people or things we want to know about. So for our Tuckshop project, our population is all the learners in the entire school. Since we can't ask everyone in the population, we pick a smaller group from inside it. We call this a sample. And the single most important word to remember about your sample is that it must be representative. Yeah, this picture shows it perfectly. The sample is just one slice of the whole pie. And if you want your conclusions about the whole pie to be correct, then that little slice has to look and taste just like the rest of the pie. It has to have all the same ingredients in the same proportions. Now please, whatever you do, avoid this huge mistake. It's called sample bias. If you only ask your friends about the Tuckshop, your results are going to be biased. To get a fair result, you need to use something like random sampling, where every single learner from every grade has an equal chance of being picked. That's how you get results you can trust. Okay, let's wrap all this up into your final exam checklist. For any data handling question, this should be the process going through your head. 1. Start with a clear, unbiased question. 2. Know your data type. 3. Pick the best tool for the job. And 4. Make sure your sample is fair and representative. Nail these steps and you'll be golden. Because at the end of the day, good data always starts with a good question. So what would you ask to make your school a better place? And who would you need to ask to get the real story? That's what math literacy is all about.